Welcome back to Man versus Machine. Bradley Stalder with you. Ryan Reynolds also with you. I'm trying to catch up in the facial hair, Ryan. It's in progress. Unfortunately, I may not be able to make it the rest of the season to catch up to the facial hair, but I've given a good faith effort to at least start getting us going here. How are you doing entering week 5?
A quarter of the season. Well, a soft quarter of the season's in the books. I went 4-1 against the spread last week, so I'm pretty emotionless when it comes to all this stuff. But if I go 4-1 or better against the spread in a week, that legitimately makes me happy. So looking forward, trying to keep that going.
Let's go. My player profiler articles have been like complete hit or miss so far this year. Like I've had 3-0 weeks, I've had 0-3 weeks, just everywhere in between. The premise of the article that I write each week is players outside the top 50 who I think will get at least 12.5 points and half-point scoring. And that's tough to do, to nail down those flexes, but we're at like 42% right now. To think like even the top players in the NFL, like they're 50% of the time, 60% of the time getting flex. So try to identify these targets. Like I nailed Chuba Hubbard last week. That was fun. I would have had Cordero Patterson had he not gone out. Actually, Patterson was like my deep cut for last week, where every week I pick one player outside the top 100, and Patterson was well on his way to getting good points. He was the best running back in the Pittsburgh backfield until he injured his ankle as well. So win some, lose some. We're having fun here, Man versus Machine. Tonight, we're going to be discussing some of the big storylines that are going to affect or have been affecting our perspective of the fantasy players. We're going to talk about some possible trade opportunities, what that may look like impact wise, some of our favorite landing spots, and discuss some of the depth charts as well that may be shifting around a little bit. The last part of the episode is rest of season rankings for particular players, and of course, answering your questions and answers as we get near the end. So Ryan, we'll kick us off. Yesterday, officially a trade request from Davante Adams, Las Vegas Raiders wide receiver. There'd always been, it seems like, this pervasive disgruntledness from Adams ever since Derek Carr left. And so now that Adams is, they're not playing, the Raiders are not playing too well. The quarterback situation is very murky. The head coach doesn't seem to have confidence. He liked to post, on Instagram that may have caught the ire of the world, like coaches, come on, like stay off the socials. Davante Adams requested trade yesterday and then immediately puts to the top of his trade target list Derek Carr's New Orleans Saints and the New York Jets. Of course, that's been, ever since Aaron Rodgers was with the Jets, that was the natural connection. How are you reading this situation, Ryan? And are those two the top teams that you think Adams could be going to if a trade was executed?
That's a good question. First, this is a fun example of why I don't like wide receivers. This is week 4. I get that he's disgruntled because half the reason he went to Vegas because he was playing with his college teammate Derek Carr. I get that.
Right.
But like you left Green Bay. Green Bay maybe makes some noise if you stay one more year that year too, which I know bothers me a little bit. But yeah, the Jets make obvious sense. They're in all in win now mode. He has the rapport with Rodgers. He probably transforms that offense. Although you still have the Nathaniel Hackett problem, so that's that's still on the table. Pittsburgh, I get it kind of. But it's like, are you guys really think you're going to make some noise this year? I think like they're a team that could win 10, 11 games and maybe lose a first-round playoff game. And I'm not sure Davante Adams changes that radically. I don't know how the cap situation will work in Dallas. I think Dallas would make a ton of sense if they could make it fit financially.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Davante Adams is one of those players that is still an alpha. He's still the main target earner. He would very much eclipse George Pickens. It would hurt George Pickens if it goes to Pittsburgh with New Orleans. I think it's still it'd be a lot closer in terms of who whether it's Olave or Olave and Rashid Shaheed are both getting about the same target share now. So Adams, I think, would get a majority of that, probably push them both down a little bit. And then if it was to the Jets, we're already seeing Garrett Wilson get a lot of expected fantasy points, but not turning that into a real thing because Lazard, the connection is real. The chemistry is real with Lazard and Aaron Rodgers. And now you amplify that, you turn that up between Rodgers and Adams. I think that hurts Garrett Wilson the most of those three, because Pickens was already boom bust to begin with, and the passing volume in Pittsburgh wouldn't sustain Adams anyways. So, it probably is best for fantasy for him to stay. I think it's best for fantasy for him to stay.
I would say either stay or the Jets. I could see him making some noise with the Jets. New Orleans, I don't understand that either. It's like, do you think you're going somewhere, Saints? And Pittsburgh, you're right. That would be a downgrade, and it will hurt Pickens too.
The financial aspect also doesn't make sense for New Orleans. The reality is they are the kick the can down the road type of team. Like literally, they're going to be paying Taysom Hill for the next however many years. So much guaranteed money to by that time, like a 37-year-old tight end. Nevertheless, Davante Adams is also remotely tied to the Chiefs because of the issues that the Chiefs have had with the injury bug. We're going to dive a little bit more into the Chiefs injury situation with Rashee Rice. We don't have clarity specifically for Rice as of this moment, but that has garnered some interest in Tyreek Hill, both because of the connection Tyreek Hill going to the Chiefs, but also because Miami has really struggled without Tua under center. Tua is reportedly due to be back around week 8. I don't think Miami moves on from Tyreek Hill, but where do you think Tyreek Hill should go if he is traded, Ryan?
They're not going to do this because it's in division, but I'd want him to go to Buffalo. I'd want Josh Allen to have like a legit elite receiver, and that does mean that production lies a little bit in football. Like Stephon Diggs is a very good player, but I've never thought Stephon Diggs is like a top 3 receiver. He's just much like Greg Jennings with Aaron Rodgers. Stephon Diggs should give a significant portion of his salary to Josh Allen for, driving his numbers up for all those years. Where with Tyreek Hill, especially with Allen's ability to throw deep balls, like I think that would be a perfect marriage. Obviously, Mahomes and Hill are the perfect marriage. I think Allen would be the second best one.
I was thinking about this question too, Ryan. You posted in our show sheet, and I thought outside the box, but I guess not that creatively. I live 25 minutes outside Detroit, and how fun would it be for Tyreek Hill to end up on the Detroit Lions? You would have J-Mo move wherever you want him to move. You have Tyreek Hill move wherever you want him to move. Amon-Ra move wherever you want him to move, and Sam Laporta also there along with Gibbs. But Bradley, how would that work out like cap wise? The Detroit Lions, I'm looking at overthecap.com right now. They have $28 million in cap space. They could take on a significant salary, a Tyreek Hill type, and that kind of makes sense. And look, the Lions are also in a win now mode. Dan Campbell talked about this last year when they were knocked out of the playoffs. You don't get lots of chances to take shots as a Super Bowl. You've got to take your shots. And I could see the Lions being a sneaky, aggressive team in these wide receivers sweepstakes to elevate their game. And look, we like what J-Mo's done. This has been significantly better than any of the production that we've seen from Jameson Williams over the course of the first couple of years of his career, but Hill allows them to take that next step. So how fun would it be for Hill to be on the Detroit Lions, Ryan?
Oh yeah, no, I mean, literally they can already make you do anything defensively. Like you have to respect Jameson Williams' speed. Now you have Amon-Ra Brown underneath. You have Sam Laporta, who's a matchup nightmare. Then you have their two-headed backfield horse, and then you put Tyreek Hill into the mix. It's like, right, like I wouldn't even know how to approach that. So It's actually a sneaky, wonderful spot. And for me, I don't think Miami's going anywhere and Hill's old. So I actually think they should do it depending on what their compensation is. So I hope to see one of these things in the coming weeks.
So what would it take? You think like a second round? Because I don't think a first round pick. I don't think you could get a first round because you're taking on salary too. But maybe a second round pick and then maybe some more pick swaps and maybe one more player coming back to Miami and a nice younger, maybe a defensive player. That's like, does that make sense?
I think a second, especially because it's going to be a bad second, and a player would be interesting. I would try to extract a first from a desperate team personally.
Sure.
And like I'm not sure Detroit or Buffalo fit into that mold of desperate, but Dallas might. I don't know if they could fit them, but Dallas might.
Well, they're desperate or delusional, Ryan.
Indeed. That's what we're looking for here with trade targets, man.
This is the way. Well, before we go on, a word from the Podfather about FastDraft.
Oh, the NFL season is underway, and if you drafted on FastDraft this summer, the Origins All-Rookie game, the Flex 4 game, check the live scoring, see where you are in the standings. You might be in line for a big payday. And no matter where you are in the world, you should have the FastDraft app because there's a custom Dynasty mock tool that's free to everybody with super sharp ADPs, and we're rolling out DFS tournaments throughout the year, and the 2025 tournaments will go live before any of us realize, oh my God, the 2025 season is upon us. Download FastDraft, register, and you will be alerted as soon as these new contests are unleashed. Check it out on fastdraft.app.
That's right. Get FastDraft. Download the app so that you're ready for next year. And if you already downloaded FastDraft, check out how your teams are doing. It's a lot of fun to draft fast. All right, Ryan,
I was just gonna say it's an innovative game. I'm not a big gamer. I bet because I'm good at it, but it's one of the better games I've seen come out, period, and a very clean platform. I'm going to be a user going forward.
You love to see it. You love to see it. I'm very excited once I can get into one of the states. Right now, Michigan, they don't have it yet, but I know Billy and Matt are working very hard to get it available in Michigan so that it's accessible for Bradley and all the other Michigan users. Shout out to them because they've been crushing it on the back end. Like to take a moment, I don't know if many in the industry, like Ryan, I'm sure you have a great appreciation for the amount of work that happens behind the scenes, the legal side that happens to ensure that these apps are safe, they're good, they're not going to cheat you, but also that they're smooth. They look really slick, and they're always up to date. And to run this, for as this is it's great. Like shout out to Matt and Billy and all the rest who have been working so tirelessly behind the scenes to make FastDraft a reality. Speaking of FastDraft, there's a player that I recommended people draft on FastDraft, and now it might be imploding. It might be, Ryan. Rhamondre Stevenson has had 4 fumbles in 4 games, and when asked about this issue, head coach Jared Mayo said that he's thinking about benching Rhamondre Stevenson and instead starting Antonio Gibson. Is this true? Like, do you think that this is going to be the reality, or is this just a motivation tactic from Mayo to like, Rhamondre, get your head out of your butt. We signed you this big contract. Like, you're our guy, but like, we got to threaten you a little bit. How are you reading this situation?
Yeah, that would be mine lean there because you don't just pay a guy, especially a running back, the contract they didn't be like, listen, you're sitting after 4 games for Antonio Gibson, who's never done anything. So I think it's a public warning that he probably didn't plan, but if there was a more significant runner behind him, if New England had like their own version of Isaiah Pacheco, like a feisty, guy who's running like there's no tomorrow, that's shown some burst, like I could see there being a problem. But like Antonio Gibson's 1, not really a lead runner, and 2, like he's never really been ultra productive. So he's more of a change of pace kind of player for me.
Yeah, that's like, we know what Antonio Gibson is. He's been in the league long enough. He's had some nice speed, former wide receiver out of Memphis, the converted wide receiver mold, the Kenneth Gainwell mold, the Tony Pollard mold, these same similar, types of running backs coming out. but it seemed like he was just dealing with injuries at the beginning of his career and just was never really the same. We never had seen that explosiveness, the rushing efficiency hadn't been there. He's always been a decent enough pass catcher, which is why I think it fit really well with him backing up Rhamondre as like a 1-to-1, like not a complementary piece. Like they have similar skill sets because Rhamondre is also capable of catching the ball out of the backfield. But I wonder if, this offense is just, it's struggle busing so hard that it doesn't really matter like who's toting the rock. And then the center Andrews goes out for the season today, or he's exploring his options, but it's probably that he's lost for the season. So any other takeaways about Rhamondre?
No, I do think the environment makes it a bit of a who cares moment, but volume is king and he does get it. So I think it's a warning shot ultimately.
We'll keep moving on. Rashee Rice, as of this recording, it is Wednesday, October 2nd at about 8 p.m. Eastern. We still have not gotten a definitive diagnosis about Rashee Rice, at least in all of the X posts that I've been reading. And I run the news desk for Player Profiler, for God's sake. I would know if there's an update, and I haven't seen anything. I've seen some speculation based on a lack of news, but the Twitter doctors are hinting at that it might be more of a bone bruise that could be more of like a 4 to 8 week injury than a lost season injury. Is there any strategy to be taken right now with Rashee Rice, or is there I don't even know if you can say he's a buy low because the range of outcomes is so wide that even if he comes back in 8 weeks, is he going to have the same explosiveness and dynamism? We're talking it's week 13 when you're going to have to roll the dice and find out. So, Ryan, how are you handling Rashee Rice? Just benching him and letting him be and hoping for the best on the waiver wire?
This happened a few years ago with Cooper Kupp. I think it was his first high ankle sprain where it's like, I don't know if he's ever coming back this year, but I'm not dropping him until he's literally done for the whole season. And further, to your point, like the Chiefs they don't care about the regular season anymore. So if there's any kind of questionable stuff going on in week 13, they want him ready for the playoffs. So I'm keeping him. I have one team that's 4-0 where I could use an upgrade in the flex. I might try to steal him from that guy just because I'm a monster if he comes back down the stretch, but otherwise, keeping him, not really looking to overpay for him either.
So before we go on, there's been some people in the chat, because shout out to the chat. We love you, chat. We just get to you at the end. We've always given you time. We have always given you time. Ryan, as my witness, we've always given a couple minutes, even at the end, to answer questions. Uncle Ted is spreading false, fake news. These shows aren't live anymore. False, Uncle Ted. False. These are real. These are live. Same, Nick M. Not live. False. Very live. And no, we did not plant you guys to try to create controversy. Fake news. We will get to the Calvin Ridley Hawkinson question at the end of the show, but it is fake news. As we say, we are going to answer questions at the end, but there's some other hard-hitting storylines that we need to get to. Malik Nabers is still in concussion protocol, and based on the news that I'm seeing, he may not be available for week 5. Is it Wan'Dale Robinson as a wide receiver 2? I mean, he's already a wide receiver 3 with volume, but can we get some upside with Wan'Dale in week 5 if Malik Nabers is out?
I'm concerned in that game if Nabers misses because Mike McDonald shows exotic fronts and Daniel Jones isn't really capable of processing them. So I could see Wan'Dale Robinson having 10 catches for 48 yards maybe in an ugly game. But yeah, I don't think he's going to make a lot of headway otherwise. So if you're in full PPR, he's interesting, but I think the Giants are probably in trouble. Where with the team that I have Malik Nabers, I might actually pivot to Jordan Whittington this week as a fill-in.
I was able to get Dontavion Wicks in my home league off of waivers. That's
right.
He's going to start as the wide receiver 2 this week.
Yeah.
For me, agree with you there. Malik Nabers probably trending toward being out as of this recording. So plan for something else. Another player that is trending toward being out, but the door's still open. The door's still open right now. Anthony Richardson. Steichen came out today and said Ant Richardson does not need to practice to be able to play during the weekend. I don't know if that's the best move for Indy for right now. Like, Joe Flacco was able to push the ball down the field yet again and make this offense look a little bit more functional. He's able to complete 10 to 15% more of his passes than Anthony Richardson. Look, this offense looks better as a downfield attack and keeps defenses more honest with Joe Flacco as the quarterback, at least until Anthony Richardson's right and healthy. I think it makes more sense to keep Flacco in there just for week 5 and let Richardson get good again. What do you think, Ryan?
Yeah, I think you definitely let him get healthy in general. Like, I don't know why Flacco's a Colt, because this team's here's the thing with the Colts. If Anthony Richardson's a superstar, the Colts can make some noise. If he's not, they're not going anywhere. So Flacco would make sense, and like for the Jets, maybe, where like he could keep you alive for a couple
they got
weeks.
Tyrod Taylor there, so
yeah, well,
same type.
Yeah. But long term, like I don't really understand why he's a Colt, but I also would not march Richardson out there until he's 100%, given the situation.
Shout out to Podson. Anthony Richardson doesn't need to practice. Tape and stats revealed that was a lie. That was great. Shout out to the chat. That was a great comment. Love it. Ryan, is this the year of the running back? Is this the year where the running backs are taking the stranglehold of our fantasy teams and our fantasy lives? We've seen first round wide receivers just bust after bust and have inconsistent games. Jamar Chase has had his bust games. Garrett Wilson had his struggles. Puka Nakua's been out. Marvin Harrison's had his ups and downs. Like this, the first round has been a struggle. Like, even CD Lamb has had, yes, his very highs, but he's also had some games where it's not great. Kenneth Walker leading the position in fantasy points per game. He had a 3-touchdown game against the Lions. And here's the thing. He's the RB1 in points per game through 4 games. Zach Charbonnet is RB14. Like, there's fantasy points to be had in Seattle. Alvin Kamara up there as well. Derrick Henry looks like the real deal, 150 or more rushing yards each of the last 2 games. Is this just early season running backs are healthy and that's why they're dominating? Or is this a paradigm shift that we're starting to see from a fantasy perspective, that running backs were just a little undervalued this offseason and now we're gaining some value?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. I do think that, defense has been building their rosters around defending, Patrick Mahomes, your nickels, your base package, where you're lighter and faster. And, if I was a coach, I'd be looking to run the ball against that too. So I think Kenneth Walker's, I think that's going to slide a little bit. He had 3 touchdowns against the Lions, who normally like shut down running games. So hat tip to him. They played 3 brutal teams to start the year, although Denver's defense actually looks like it might be pretty good. And Kenneth Walker could have a good game against the Giants this week. But I think long term, once they start playing San Francisco and so on, I think that's going to dip a little bit. Alvin Kamara's role right now is just enormous. I don't see that lasting. And Derrick Henry, in weeks 1 and 2, I remember writing that I wish this happened when Henry was in his prime. And then against the Cowboys, he kind of looked like he was close to his prime again suddenly. Then last week, it's all right. This is like actual Derrick Henry again. So Derrick Henry is one of those guys where I'll bet on him when he's gone. I bet against him when he's gone. So I think that unless he gets injured in some way, I think that's going to continue.
Before we take our next break, Ryan, I want your take on whether Kendre Miller will be able to get out of the doghouse once he's removed from the injured reserve list. Because right now it's week 5. Kendre Miller could, in theory, be activated. But we've seen just so much negative coach speak coming from Dennis Allen, coming from the New Orleans Saints coaches about how Miller just can't stay healthy. He might be a talented guy, but how would they know that? And can he execute the scheme? Can he execute the game plan that the New Orleans Saints want to run. And now the Saints are looking, they've had some great games offensively through the first 4 weeks. Is Kendre Miller a threat to Alvin Kamara in maybe even the second half of the season?
Maybe in the second half, especially if the Saints start to, fall off a little bit, but because, his pure volume is probably not sustainable. So maybe for that purposes, he gets some more uptick in the second half, but especially when they're talking about him being like, well, he hasn't proven it yet. Veteran coaches aren't going to make changes in the middle of the season, in that kind of situation.
Not when they're riding Alvin Kamara, who's been the face of the franchise for the last however many years. And a Pro Bowl, probably going to be eventually retired in the Saints Ring of Honor. Like that type of pedigree player, you're not going to bench him for, a third rounder who's been struggling. And we'd have to really see it turn around for Kendre, both from a health perspective and from a performance perspective. But we are going to return, and after we return from this break, we're going to talk about some backfields that need a little bit more clarity and who should be the starting quarterback for the New England Patriots moving forward. Before we do that, a word from the Podfather.
Hey, I want to take a moment to thank you for tuning in. It's important to me that all of our media be free, and one of our key missions is to make as much statistics and information and deep analysis available on playerprofiler.com for free. This is only possible because of you allowing a true independent sports media enterprise to thrive unlike any other in the business. So please subscribe to the All In package to continue to make all of this possible. If you can't do All In, that's okay. We have a draft kit. Or you can just subscribe to the player rankings. Those now include tight end premium FFPC ranks, our brand new data analysis package will blow your hair back. And of course, there's our Dynasty Deluxe and our DFS Dominator. Take a moment, check out our premium services to ensure that all of our stats, information, data, content is available to you, especially you, the people that get the site and get the show.
That's right. Welcome back to Man vs. Machine. Ryan Reynolds, Bradley Stalder with you, discussing some of the big storylines as we enter into week 5 for fantasy football. We've discussed Rhamondre Stevenson, Rashee Rice, Malik Nabers, Davante Adams, and Tyreek Hill, but we're going to now shift to the backfields. But Ryan, sometimes people who are casuals were drafting the wrong B. Robinson, right? Is it Brian Robinson or Bijan Robinson? Then the casuals wouldn't be paying too close of attention, but they also would be confused if you were to reveal that Bijan Robinson was a consensus first-round pick and Brian Robinson was, a 7th, 8th round pick? Depends on the league you were in, but around that space. It seems as though maybe not necessarily flip-flop, but both should be meeting it around in the middle between the two, maybe a 3rd and 4th round selections based on their production so far. Sure, there was reasons why we loved Bijan Robinson coming into the season. Should we have a little bit more trepidation rest of season for Bijan Robinson, and then comparing him, should we remain bullish on Brian Robinson moving forward?
I think you were right about Brian Robinson. You liked him coming into the year, and I think you're, even long-term, that's going to end up being a good take. But let's just keep in mind, they played the Bengals and the Cardinals the last 2 weeks. That's one of the reasons their offense has gone absolutely crazy. I think there's probably a bit of a correction or a come down from where they're playing right now. As with Bijan, it's the opposite. The first 4 games of their schedule were the toughest games of their schedule. Now the rest of the year, Dallas is really the only team left on the schedule where they might not be a favorite. So I like Bijan Robinson going forward. If I could get him cheap, I'm doing it. My one caveat is Tyler Algier is actually a good player, so he's going to continue to cut into Bijan Robinson's workload.
If you were able to check out my week 5 flex play deep cut, it's Tyler Algier for week 5. Bijan Robinson is dealing with a shoulder injury, a hamstring injury, an ankle injury, all 3 supposed injuries in the last 6 days. coming into week 4, and then now he's been limited practices this week. Yes, of course, all the caveats of it's a short week. They only report certain things, blah, blah, blah. We know the drill in terms of it's a short week. They're just walking through practices. But you mentioned it. Tyler Algier is legit good at football. He was one of the he rushed for over 1,000 yards his first year. He had, in the second half of his rookie year, the highest rushing grade among all running backs. Yards after contact per attempt was always among the top. And whenever he's been given a decent amount of opportunity, he's taken full advantage. There was a reason why, like Arthur Smith, as much as we like want to hold our fist to the sun, like there's something there. He knew how to use Tyler Algier. And I think with Bijan being a little banged up, Algier is a very interesting deep cut for week 5 and a must own handcuff moving forward.
Oh, definitely. I mean, if we go back to when Bijan was drafted, it was almost kind of curious why they took him when they already had Algier. Obviously we're guys that don't want to really take running backs in the top of the first round, but well, the thing that I like about Robinson, especially going forward, is Kirk Cousins is stationary and Robinson's an asset in the passing game. So
yes,
I think his margin could be made in that phase going forward too.
And the Brian Robinson, the other B Robinson from Washington, I was unsure of how to suss out the running back roles because Brian Robinson picked up a lot of passing work last year, and Austin Eckler, the profiles as a pass catching back, a weapon in the backfield. But Eckler missed last week and Brian Robinson went bonkers. And we'll still be monitoring whether Eckler continues to be out with that concussion. But Brian Robinson, he's just your RB2. Like that's what he is. Maybe some days he's a high end RB2, some days he's a low end RB2. But with how Washington has been playing under Jaden Daniels, yes, it's been like relatively easier schedule. But there's still going to be volume to be had for Brian Robinson. And that was the crux of the argument for drafting him in round 7, round 8, round 9, wherever you were getting Brian Robinson.
Yeah, no.
All right.
I love the guy too. I mean, this is a guy who got shot his rookie season and played
shot in the butt.
like 4 weeks later. So
oh yeah. Shot in the butt. For sure. And then look at him. That's why he's a coach's favorite. Like that's all narrative that always sticks with you. That you came back from being shot in the butt. Speaking of the backfield, the Packers. I don't know. There wasn't a good transition there, Ryan. The Packers, though, have a more muddied backfield than we anticipated. We saw certainly the upside with Josh Jacobs handling 30-something carries a couple weeks ago. But are you buying or selling Emmanuel Wilson's role in the Packers offense, at least until Marshawn Lloyd is back?
Yeah, I'm going to sell it because 2 weeks ago against the Titans, he saw most of his run late. And last week against Minnesota, that was a very odd game where Green Bay was down, 28 points early, where Jacobs had a pretty good passing game role. So I view him as a stash. Like when we talked about Chase Brown a couple weeks ago, I view him as a lesser version of Chase Brown, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does make sense. Perhaps a less muddied backfield, the Buccaneers. Or maybe it is more muddied. We provide some clarity. We provided some clarity for the Packers. However, Tampa Bay, it seems like Bucky Irving every week is just getting a little bit more. And Rachaad White, a little bit less. And Rachaad White's, I don't think never going to go away because of the passing game capabilities. But we knew that he struggled as a between the tackles guy. Like he was not an efficient rusher. And that's why I was out on him last year. It backfired on me because the coaches, didn't have a number 2 running back to rely on. But now they have found Bucky Irving, who is clearly a capable running back in the NFL. So how muddied can this Tampa Bay Buccaneers backfield get?
I mean, these two guys last week both had 10 carries for 49 yards on the dot. So that's as muddy as it gets, I'd say. And, what's actually a little bit more concerning if you're a Rachaad White guy is Bucky Irving got 2 targets too to Rachaad White's 3. So I don't think that sticks. I think Rachaad White's definitely the passing game back, but I could see them essentially splitting carries, or maybe White gets a small edge over the next few weeks. But yeah, that looks like it's close to a 50-50 split for me going forward.
Ooh, yikes! Rachaad White drafters are feeling the skull emoji right now. Yikes! Because we were hoping, especially in the PPR leagues, like we'll just get some garbage PPR points. And for how good Tampa Bay has been offensively, we've seen Mike Evans have big spike weeks. We've seen Godwin have spike weeks. The offense, the passing offenses looked great. But Trey Palmer and Jalen McMillan are going to be out for week 5. I do think that means a little bit more for all the wide receivers, but also a little bit more for the running backs too. The target shares are going to get distributed to these running backs, and Bucky Irving, obviously capable pass catching running back coming out of college. Last storyline that we're tracking, Ryan, Drake Maye. Is he going to start in the first half of the season? Jacoby Brissett hasn't been playing very well. The offensive line is not good. The offense seems a little lost. Is this we're just going to pack it in with Drake Maye and force him to sit? Or we want to get him reps? I'm feeling it's the first one, but yeah. Are we going to see Drake Maye?
First, to show that we're live, the Bobby Bacala special in the chat. I'm from Jersey. I understand what you mean. I love it. Now, as a player, I comp Drake Maye to Trey Lance, which means I think he's a developmental player. Like, he's talented and all that, but I would not throw him to the wolves with the supporting cast. I would not play him right now. I would. Oh boy, man! I get the idea that you should, especially because you're a first round quarterback's contract is an advantage for roster building purposes. I get that, and you get better by doing things. I understand all that, but not every situation is the same. For instance, the Giants going forward on 4th and 3 at midfield right after halftime. I don't know if anyone's watched the Giants offense. That's not a slam dunk for me. Where if we're talking about Josh Allen, sure, no problem, do it whenever you want. But you can get bad habits playing behind terrible offensive lines. If you're a quarterback, it can ruin people. So I'd wait if I were them.
I agree. I think one of the things that bad franchises do is they go halfway in between. The good franchises either just roll their guy out because they know they got their guy, or they hold on to their guy and just bury him. Like the Packers, they buried Jordan Love for 3 years, and he was certifiably terrible, especially in year 1, just really bad. Arguably one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL at that point. I'm saying that as a Packers fan, but then it took 3 years for him to get mentored, to learn the offense, to work on his mechanics, to not have the pressure on him, to make sure that the offense, the entire team is built around his skill set, and that what they've been seeing in practice for 3 years can be catered to that. And look where it's at now. You've got Reed, you got Wicks, you got Dobbs, you got Watson, you got Kraft, who's actually now the tight end 1 in Green Bay. You got Kraft, the tight end 1 in Green Bay, who was the 3rd round pick when Musgrave was 2nd. And then you have the running back situation with Marshawn Lloyd, Josh Jacobs. You're kind of filling that in with maybe some of the veteran AJ Dillon, who's out for the season, but that was the plan anyways. So you've got guys that you've filled your offense around. The Patriots, maybe, do you think there's a more talent-less NFL team than the Patriots?
No, I don't. That's not at all.
Why would this would just literally be the Browns again? If they just rolled him out. And that's why the Browns stayed bad for many, many years. They took their 1st round quarterbacks and just threw them to the wolves. Please save us, Tim Couch. Please save us, Brady Quinn. Please save us, Johnny Manziel. Right? The list goes on and on. But that's why, look, you want to either just put chips in or take all the chips out. You don't want to be stuck in the middle, and that's what dooms teams. So if I'm the Patriots and I haven't played him so far, you got to keep him out the rest of the way.
if they, Patrick Mahomes sat out his first year too, so it's not just Aaron Rodgers, it's not just Jordan Love. It's worked with it. Actually worked with Rodgers too. He sat behind Favre. So I think this is a situation where if they literally didn't play him all year, maybe the regular season finale, I'd be fine with that.
All right. Well, great. Those were some of the storylines. We spent the first 40 minutes or so going through some of the big storylines, how we're handling those, the fantasy impact. We're going to just go through pretty quickly some of the rest of season rankings, maybe suss out, not necessarily like this has to be wide receiver 12, but about where we would be drafting these guys for rest of season tournaments. Or Ryan, we can also speculate where we want these guys to be for next year too. First guy that we'll look at is Malik Nabers. Right now, Nabers is the wide receiver 1 overall in fantasy points per game. Daniel Jones, he could be gone. He could be gone next year. There's a pathway for it.
Yeah.
And I think that's where you can lean into the major upside. So I know that some people are the stock is already so high for Malik Nabers. Is he a top 3 pick, a top 5 pick? Like that's about, I think, like I don't see Nabers getting outside the top 5 if you're redrafting for this year.
No, I think at minimum he's your wide receiver 4 behind Jefferson, Chase, Lamb. He would be wide receiver 2 for me behind Jefferson, and that's it. And next year, I definitely think he's a top 5 pick unless something catastrophic happens.
Yeah, probably wide receiver 3-ish. I'd still like Jefferson and Lamb. Those are my 2. Maybe that's just me holding on to my biases, but at least for this year, I would want to see what the quarterback situation looks like for next year. It really can't get. I mean, at least Daniel Jones is trying to air it out. You have to give Brian Daboll credit for force feeding Malik Nabers. It's Malik Nabers and then a significant teardrop Wan'Dale Robinson, and then it's like no one else getting reception targets out of this Giants offense. So Malik Nabers, the volume is there, but also it's downfield. Like they're forcing the ball downfield to Malik Nabers, and they're targeting him in the red zone. He's getting all of the money plays. He's getting all of the targets. It's volume, money targets. Like this is it. So, I mean, a top 5 pick next year, top 5 pick. I think that's easy.
Yeah, agreed.
Patrick Mahomes is next on our list. Right. I saw a stat, Ryan. I know that these have started to come out more recently, given that everyone is finally coming around to my thesis that Patrick Mahomes is not a top quarterback for fantasy. And we talked about this in Man vs. Machine last week, but Mahomes over the last 365 days is the quarterback 17 in fantasy points per game.
Yeah, that's what he is now. That's what he is. I mean, you were right. It's their wide receiver room, or you have to include Kelsey, so the pass catcher room, and plus like Pacheco's out, so it's rough in Kansas City. So I don't really have a ton of hope for there being. He's not a plug and play anymore right now. That's for sure.
Not a plug and play, and I didn't draft a lot of Mahomes, but when I did, I drafted Kelsey, so it's kind of like, ugh, yikes. It's not been great for those teams. I'm going to pair these next 2 together, Ryan, because I think it's a similar conversation. Breece Hall and Bijan Robinson. We did hammer a lot on Bijan earlier, how we think that the rest of the season is going to be a little bit better for Bijan. But Breece Hall came out with comments that he's just trying to do his 1/11th of the offense. That's not what you want to hear. Like, how demoralized is Breece Hall, and are there better days ahead?
Yes, but I don't think he's going to pay off at ADP, in part because 3 options here. 1, the Jets' offensive line was horrifyingly bad last week. 2, Nathaniel Hackett is not a very good play caller, and 3, Braylon Allen is legitimately good. So, not going to pay off at ADP, but I do think we'll see more than we have.
I think so too, but is this going to affect him for next year as long as you see the coaching staff? If the Jets fail to not just make it to the playoffs, but get to the second round of the playoffs, you could see Saleh and the rest of the coaching staff just being gutted, because the reality is this offense is not great. And if they don't make a move for Davante Adams or another big impact player, because as much as I like Mike Williams as a player, like, he's not going to be the needle mover to elevate that Jets offense, and it's not going to be able to overcome the organizational concerns that we have. Like, he's not that type of game changer where a Tyreek Hill or Davante Adams could be. I'm just not convinced that the Jets have enough to be able to say, we've got organizational structure to support all the things that are happening. So I do have concerns with Breece Hall moving forward.
Likewise. And I'm with you on Mike Williams too. I think he'll have a couple spike games, but he's no longer a reliable player. And I think the Jets have enough to be good, but I thought they should have fired Robert Saleh after last year. And that's my big concern here, is I don't think that coaching staff is really going to help improve anything. It's basically all on Rodgers.
It is. Well, I mean, Rodgers is going to do what he does. And maybe that's why the coaching staff stayed, was because he just wanted it's classic, like, LeBron phenomenon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Where LeBron is like, just give me the coach that will let me run the offense. Yeah. It's just hands off, Coach LeBron do his thing. Let Coach Aaron Rodgers do his thing. Perked up Aaron Rodgers do his thing. Shout out to Aaron. Anyways, let's continue on. Devon Achane. This feels like the widest range of outcomes type of player for the Miami Dolphins. We've already talked about Tyreek Hill, the possibility that he might be traded. Jalen Waddle was outside the top 50 of wide receivers. If the listeners saw the video for bold projections from week 4, both Evan and I had Jalen Waddle as wide receiver 51. Wide receiver 51. We were full fade. The expert consensus was wide receiver 36, and he finished as like wide receiver 60. So look, this Miami Dolphins offense is in free fall without Tua and without a stable backup. So how are you handling a Devon Achane who, if Tua comes back and runs the offense, he's back to a top 5, top 3 running back, but he could also be running back 40.
Yeah, I don't really like him. He's just fast to me. I don't like him as much as everyone else does. But I'll say this: if there's a guy in your league with an itchy trigger finger that's struggling, and like, again, I have a couple 4-0 teams, I'm going to try to get Achane cheap, in the idea that Tua comes back, week 10 or so, this offense starts to hum. Then, like, I'm definitely trying to do that if I can.
For the Raiders, Brock Bowers right now is the tight end 3. If Davante Adams gets traded, I mean, the pants are all the way off. Wheels are all the way up. Like, we are sky high. Literally, Theo Rhamondre is going to get like his in the future meme gif, whatever he does, because he does that periodically. It's one of my favorites. It's phenomenal. It's signature Theo Rhamondre. Like, that is the reality if Brock Bowers is in Vegas and Davante Adams is traded. So how are you handling Brock Bowers? Is he like a buy high target?
Good question. It actually stumped me a little bit. I'm not sure I'd call him that. And here's the reason why. Again, I haven't looked at the data for this week, but like, they had him in pass protection more than I would have liked this week. So that concerns me. But as a player, and teams are going to then be able to game plan for him if Adams is gone. So that's a little concerning, giving the quarterback. But as a player, like, he's already maybe the most talented tight end in the league. So I'm not going to buy high on him, but I have him on a few teams and I'm not moving him. I'm not trying to get rid of him now. That's for sure.
No, we're keeping the pride. Yes, Theo will open his show with it. Absolutely. The world will be in perfection. We know it's the end of the world if Brock Bowers becomes tight end 1 overall this season. I mean, we saw a rookie do it last year with Sam Laporta.
Yeah.
Here's a trickier one. Nick Chubb. He's starting to practice this week. I don't know if he'll be activated soon, but how are you approaching Nick Chubb, who had been just the workhorse for Cleveland? Is he in a void? You're shaking your head.
How is this man practicing is my question. So, but the thing with the Browns too is
he's built different, Ryan. He's a different animal. He's like Derrick Henry 2.0. Like this guy is built different.
It's funny you said that's literally what I was thinking. It's like, this is a guy I'll bury him when he's dead. So if the Browns are 1-7, it's like, why are we rushing Nick Chubb in? But if they can stay alive over the next few weeks, I mean, he's not a guy I'm interested in betting against. Let's put it that way.
Ooh. So buy low on Nick Chubb's that we're trying to get him. There we go. So sweet. Jaden Daniels, quarterback one. We're looking at the rest of his schedule or the next few games. It gets a little more difficult. Like we talked about Washington having a nice schedule to start the season, but Jaden Daniels taking advantage of it. I mean, he's doing what he's supposed to do. Let's not penalize him for it.
Oh no, he's been great. He's the real deal. I mean, I do think darker days are ahead though. Cleveland, Baltimore, then Chicago in week 8. Like that's pretty brutal. The Steelers are very good against Lamar Jackson. So that's a tough matchup too. So I do think that he's the real deal. I think Washington, as long as he doesn't get hurt, as long as he stays healthy, like he's the best quarterback the Commanders have ever had already. I'm not really an overreactor and that's where I'm at. So, but quarterback 1 overall in fantasy, no, I think it's possible for this season that the last 2 weeks have been the peak, and that's not even a knock because the last 2 weeks have been freaking ridiculous. So that's my stance on him. Definitely not. Again, if someone's willing to overpay for him, if someone's like, "Hey, I'll give you Josh Allen for Jaden Daniels," like, okay, that's fine. In redraft, that's fine. I'll take that, no problem. But not panicking. I think he's going to finish as a quarterback 1, and again, absolutely ridiculous the last 2 weeks.
On my Scott Fishbowl teams, I have both Josh Allen and Jaden Daniels. It feels so good.
Baby. Yeah.
Delicious. We're going to finish up this section with a rookie. We'll examine wide receiver Brian Thomas. He's been coming along. He's earned 20% target shares. He's been getting red zone targets. I mean, Christian Kirk has not been playing very well. Evan Ingram has been out. The Jags offense has been struggling. And there's also been some chatter from Jeremy Fowler that Christian Kirk is on the trade block. So I think the better days are ahead for Brian Thomas, even though we've already seen him spike a few times. Like he is a buy candidate, I think, in terms of he could end up being a round 4 or 5 player for next year. I think that's a pretty nice spot.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, every Tuesday, I might do it on Monday. Some weeks I watch every game, so I write down notes. And in week 1, I said, I think Brian Thomas is already the best receiver on the Jaguars, and he's already producing like the best receiver on the Jaguars. Not only is he the best, he's producing that way. I love that 4-5 turned type player. That makes a ton of sense. Love him going forward too. I think he's the guy there. And while the Jaguars could be a team that fires their coach in season, which is usually a bad sign for the offense, like there's usually repercussions for that kind of move. But Trevor Lawrence is still a good player, so it's not like Malik Nabers with Daniel Jones where you're hoping and praying that the consistency. If Trevor Lawrence started tearing it up in the second half, it wouldn't be completely shocking. So I like Brian Thomas for sure.
Yeah, he's one that I want to, put jump on the bandwagon. This is the time before we see the full breakout, before he becomes the most popular or one of the most popular players. All right, it's question answer time. We've got about 5 minutes left in the segment. I promise I am a man who keeps my word, Ryan. You know that. The people know that. You stick around. We get your questions answered rapid fire. Do we want rest of season likely, Kraft, or Freiermuth? Who do you think, Ryan?
I'm actually going to go Freiermuth since he's the second piece in that offense, but it would be between Freiermuth or Kraft.
Yeah, I go Freiermuth as well. He's been the most consistent, and I think this has just been low for Musgrave. Like, it'll go through ebbs and flows, and same thing for Mark Andrews. Like, I think better days are ahead for both of those players. Would we trade Garrett Wilson for Higgins, Brian Thomas, and Kelsey? I mean, yes.
all 3 of them, yes. Definitely.
I mean, yes. So of 1 for 3, give me the Higgins, Thomas, Kelsey side. Cool. Jelly asks, do I hold onto Mostert, who is hurt and the bye next week?
No.
We're letting Mostert go. I'm trying to read some of these, and some of them are not making sense. I just dropped Calvin Ridley for TJ Hawkinson. Is this a good move?
Well, let me make the comment, since you're a biased Calvin Ridley guy. So let me make the comment here. Didn't you have someone else better like that you should have dropped before Calvin Ridley? Because taking Hawkinson, pat on the back, that's a very long-term move. I love it. I'm not sure I would have dropped Calvin Ridley in the overwhelming majority of situations, though. That seems a little aggressive to me.
I want to aggressively target TJ Hawkinson, though. And if you are all set at wide receiver and you've got wide receivers on wide receivers, I don't mind it. The pathway for TJ Hawkinson to be tight end 1 from weeks 10 onward, 11 onward, to be tight end 1 during the fantasy playoffs, like that is very much within the range of outcomes, especially how bad the tight end position has been and how good the Vikings have been. Like, give Hawkinson some time to get acclimated. Don't expect that he's going to be doing things right away, but this is kind of fitting with the timeline that I thought we get a week 6 bye, go through week 7, be activated for week 8 around that time. And so
add some
go for it, Ryan.
I was going to say, to add some context for Hawkinson, I literally looked at every one of my teams this week to see if he was available in any of my leagues.
Fair enough. Let's see. Lots of comments. Should I trade Pittman, Mostert, and a 6th for Josh Jacobs? Like a 6th in redraft for next year?
Yeah. I mean, it depends. If you're in win now mode, I think I do it, and you need Josh Jacobs, and you don't have anyone at running back 2, maybe. But
and you don't need the wide receiver Pittman.
Yeah, that's the thing there, because like Mostert long term, I don't care. 6th round pick, like I don't care about that either. Again, it depends on format though with that. So I would lean that if you think you're a contender.
Agreed. Should I accept a trade where I'm getting Garrett Wilson and giving up Ayuk and Zay Flowers? No. Like Flowers has had some down games, but he's still a flex guy, and Ayuk, I think better days are ahead.
Yeah, I could see Ayuk and Garrett Wilson finishing up pretty similarly at this point. I think I would trade either of them straight up for Garrett Wilson without much, trepidation, but I wouldn't do the 1 for 2 or 2 for 1 rather.
Yes. All right, let's see if there are any other questions, blah, blah, blah. Yes, it looks like we answered all of the questions, Ryan. This is great. Make sure if you like the content, found this helpful, smash the subscribe button, hit the like, subscribe to Player Profiler, follow Ryan Reynolds on the Twitter machine at Ryan Reynolds NFL, not Van City Reynolds. Ryan is much better looking than that other guy. Don't get confused. You can follow me on the X machine, Bradley Stalder at FF Stalder. Man versus Machine normally goes live at 9 p.m. Eastern, but life happens, and I appreciate Ryan's flexibility to bump it to 8 today. And also shout out to Memphis and Dynasty Warzone. They're going live at 9, so tune in to Player Profiler right after this. Dynasty Warzone goes live on Player Profiler. Any last words for the people, Ryan, before we sign off?
Still, it's still 4 weeks. Don't overreact, but if you're in a 1-3 hole, maybe it's time to start making some changes.
Make some changes, baby. I started my home league. I think this was like 5 years ago, 6, whatever it was, when the Rams were the number 1 offense with Todd Gurley and Robert Woods and that Jared Goff. I didn't have all those players on my team, but I started 0-7 in my home league. It was disaster zone, like just getting nipped left and right. So I scrambled and just traded everybody for the Rams offense, and I stacked and I won the rest of the games, won the league, ran it straight through. And it's possible. Don't give up. Like, make the moves, put your chips in. What does it hurt? If you're losing, might as well give some shots and take some bets. Make it happen. Until next time, everyone, good luck in the fantasy football streets.
Hey, I want to thank you for being part of this broadcast. If you have any thoughts on it, leave a comment. If you enjoyed it, make sure you leave a like. And if you want to see more shows on the Player Profiler channel, subscribe to it. That's how we know You want more.